Bună ziua, Your Excellencies, dear students, dear professors, dear guests. I prepared here an introductory speech, but I will feel more comfortable to speak without these notes, because everything for today, at least, I think is very clear. We have exceptionally experienced and well-prepared specialists in their field coming here at SNSPA speaking with students and professors. Guests from European Court of Accounts, guests from Romanian Court of Account, guests from Moldavian Court of Account. And it's not something, let's say, not usual to come to SNSPA and to meet with our students, because as you very well know, in this room and in different other rooms in SNSPA, during our academic years, we have met ministers, prime ministers, presidents, members of the parliament, international officials, and I just presented to our guests in my office some examples. For example, 2 weeks ago, we had the director of the OECD Department on Development Programs. Also in this room, we launched 2 World Bank annual development projects, reports, one on education and one on digital. We used to have the OECD PISA report. The last PISA report was launched here in December 2024, if I'm not wrong. And practically, as a professor and as a rector, I am very happy when we have a kind of special teachers, but without any kind of burden on my budget, because I'm not going to pay anyone today. So it's really a huge interest for us as a school of government, a school where our students are learning about how to run a country or how to work on an European and international environment. It's really a privilege for us to have the possibility to meet today, as I mentioned, exceptionally professionals with experience not just at the specific Court of Accounts or audit, but with experience in politics, in governments, in the European Parliament, or in different other areas. The schedule today is the following. We'll have a main presentation. The president of the European Court of Account, Mr. Murphy, will introduce this presentation, and after that, the other guests will have 5 minutes interventions. I hope Mr. Moscovici will not be upset on me for saying 2 things. Firstly, he is our colleague from Civica. Yeah, you say Civica. Professor Moscovici used to teach to SNSPA. SNSPA is the leader of our consortium. If you want an Erasmus mobility as a professor to SNSPA, Crina Radulescu is here. Please address her in writing, and we'll see if you may be a mobility Erasmus professor within Civica. Secondly, I told you when we met, you will have a surprise. And I will, yeah, you have the surprise already? Yeah. The surprise is the fact that we have a colleague from the national television coming here to say hello to Mr. Moscovici, because she used to do an interview with your father in 1999, if I'm not wrong. But the second surprise is the fact that when I was a candidate here to SNSPA, I had to read the books of your father. So Moscovici, it's part of our history as a compulsory bibliography to many classes, not just when I was a candidate in 1996, but also afterwards, and we are very happy to welcome you here. Now, please let me introduce the President of the European Court of Auditors to have the presentation. But in my speech I put, but I was almost going to forget, we don't do this kind of events alone. We work with different institutions, Romanian institutions, European institutions. Now we worked with the Romanian Court of Account, an institution which sometimes we love, sometimes we don't. For example, when they come for 2 months to do audit in our university, I'm not sure we love them too much. But afterwards, it's okay, and we go further, we correct what is signaled, and next year it's better all the time. So thank you for organizing with us this event. Mr. Murphy, you have the floor. You can sit there or you can come here as you wish.
So, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I have to say I'd like to also thank Professor Remus and Mirella for organising this event. It gives us an opportunity to hopefully inform you a little bit about what the European Court of Auditors does, because I'm sure many of you have no idea who we are, what we do, and we hope that the next few minutes will at least make you better informed about that. I have bad news for the rector in the first instance, because you actually are paying all of us. I mean, you're an EU taxpayer, and your EU taxpayer funds the budget, which actually pays us all. So indirectly, you're actually paying us. So I'd like to thank you from the start, first of all. Thank you for that. So, as I say, we are an EU institution. Unfortunately, we're probably not as well known as we would like to be. I mean, in terms of we don't want to be known just for the sake of being known. We want to be known because basically people then are aware of the work that we do, because we think that the work that we do is very important in terms of informing EU taxpayers. And you're all EU taxpayers here, either are or will be at some stage in the future. So I think what I would like to do is just very quickly go through, what we are, as I said, what we do. And then just, I think one of the big things for us is, we're all elder statesmen here, myself, Pierre, and even Lucian. He likes to think he's very young, but we're not as young as we think we are now, Lucian. And what we need in the EU institutions is new blood. We need people to keep the project going, because we see this antipathy towards the EU and maybe people turning away from it. And we really need people that, the people in the European Commission and the European Parliament are shaping basically how we live every day. The decisions that they take ultimately filter down, and it's very important then that young people are involved. And as I say, this is not just, I'm Irish, we're a very small country, but we're losing a lot of people from the institutions, and I keep telling the Irish government, and I would say the same to every member state government, getting people into the EU institutions is an investment in the future. And that's what needs to happen, because I think it's very important that all the member states are represented. They all bring something of their own to the table. So I think it's very important. So now to go back to who we are, as I said, as I said already, we're an EU institution. There's only 7 EU institutions, in fact, so it's quite a privilege that we're members of this EU institution. The EU institutions are spread around 3 main more or less, Brussels, the famous Brussels bubble. Everyone talks about Brussels when they talk about the EU. But there are a number of bodies in Luxembourg where we're based, and that's another thing. Maybe people don't know where Luxembourg is either, as well as the court. And then we obviously have Strasbourg in France, and then the European Central Bank is in Germany, in Frankfurt. So I think we all have different roles in the architecture. This is basically the architecture of the EU institutions, and we all have very different roles. As you can see, the political direction comes from the European Council. So this is the ministers or the prime ministers who set the agenda, the political agenda. And then basically you have also, you have another fora of the council is the Council of Ministers, which meets regularly to discuss particular topics. If it's agriculture, it's all the agriculture ministers. If it's, cohesion, it's all those involved in cohesion. So that's the different fora. Then we have the 2 legislative bodies. The European Commission is the most, for us at least, is very important. It's our main auditee. They're the people who actually spend the EU budget. So the European Commission is the one who makes legislative proposals, and Pierre was a commissioner, so he knows very well how it all works. And there is a sort of a joint procedure with the European Parliament whereby they also have a role which has increased over the years in terms of the legislation which is on the table. Then we have the judiciary, which is the European Court of Justice. We've all heard of different cases being brought to the Court of Justice, which is based in Luxembourg, whether it's infringement procedures or anti-competition or whatever it might be. We had a very big recent case in Ireland with the Apple hearing, so many people have heard of that one. As I say, then we have the European Central Bank, which looks at monetary policy and banking supervision. And then we have us, and I would say last but not least. I mean, I think we're an important cog in the wheel. I think why we would like to raise our profile, I think it's not, as I said, we're auditors first and foremost. The real people in the headlines are the politicians. I mean, they're the ones who are basically, making the legislative proposals and implementing them. But as I say, we have a role. And our role is basically, I would say, I mean, it's laid out here. But what we're trying to do in a way is to contribute to the better use of the EU taxpayers' money. I've already said this several times, the EU taxpayer is what funds the EU budget. It's roughly €500 for every EU citizen. That's what goes into the EU budget every year. So all of you are donating €500 to the budget. So I think we all need to see what's happening with that money. So we basically, we're trying to improve the financial management of the budget. We're also trying to give advice to the Commission and the Parliament as to how things can improve going forward, whether it's in terms of governance, whether it's in terms of policy implementation. And these are the kind of main functions that we have. So international cooperation is on display here today, I would say. We basically have different fora where we interact with, because we are one audit community across the world. I mean, whether we're auditing in Moldova or Romania or wherever, we all have the same objective basically as independent external auditors. We're all, as I say, auditing the implementation of budgetary expenditure and trying to see how it can be done better. So we work together in different fora. I mean, we have a contact committee, which is basically they're called, very modestly, I would say, Supreme Audit Institutes. That's the Audit, the Court of Accounts in Romania or wherever. It's different names. I mean, the French Cour des Comptes, the Controlling Auditor General in Ireland, but they're all basically called the Supreme Audit Institute in the member state. And we chair that. They meet at the level of the presidents. We meet once a year. And basically, there are a lot of working groups which share experience, because what we're saying is we're all dealing with the same topics and we're trying to basically learn from each other. Then we have more international, outside the EU, there's INTESOI, which is basically the same bodies, but from all over the world. Obviously there are some specificities in different areas which are not common to us. But for instance, we're the chair of the Professional Standards Committee, and auditing standards are applicable to all auditors wherever they are. So I think it's a very important role. So as I say, I think we don't want to be sort of in our ivory tower. We basically interact because things are happening and the environment we work in is changing all the time. As you know, the seismic shifts in geopolitics and environment and everything else, energy is all having an impact ultimately on the work that we do down the road. So this is the organisation of the European Court of Auditors. In a way, we mirror the European Commission, which most people will know probably more about. I mean, we basically have a member which is nominated by each member state. So we have 27 members. Lucian, there is the Romanian member. He's in Chamber 4. Pierre is in Chamber 5. So basically what we've done is these chambers are basically following particular policy areas so that we can do an amount of work in all the policy areas every year. So for instance, Chamber 1 is basically natural resources. So there we're looking at things like climate change, energy, agriculture. Chamber 2 is cohesion, which is very important for Romania. For instance, I mean, I think you get about 2 billion every year from the EU for cohesion, 2.9 billion for agriculture. Then you have Chamber 3, which is basically the external world, if you like. And up until now, this was a very small chamber. It was dealing with sort of, EU support to third countries in Africa, but over the last few years, it has really developed. We're looking at things like migration there, cybersecurity, defence, obviously, now is another thing. The Ukraine, obviously, is a big issue for us in that chamber. So it's a chamber which its role is sort of expanding. Chamber 4, where Lucian is basically the one where we look at the common market, if you like, at competition. We also have a lot of research and development that's covered in there, Horizon. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. And then Chamber 5 looks at horizontal issues across the budget. So what we're trying to do every year is cover a number of topics which we hope are relevant for both our stakeholders, which, as I said, is the Commission and the Parliament mainly, but also some of them are very technical and wouldn't be of interest to sort of the general public, let's say, but some of them actually are. And we might come across some of them which I think are very interesting for the man on the bus, as they always say. I mean, you know, the normal citizen. So as well as that, we obviously have on the administrative side, we have a Secretary General who looks after things like IT. You know, we have a big translation support because we have to publish everything and we have to communicate with all the member states in the official languages. So we have a big translation overhead, I would say, at the moment. So he's in charge of that. We have an ethics committee, which I think is extremely important in this day and age. We're all public servants. We have to be seen, you know, to practice what we preach, basically, and be seen to be holier than thou, if you like. Under my remit then, basically, we have horizontal issues. I have the legal service and internal audit, but I think more importantly are things like our strategy, our annual work programme. So horizontal issues that basically then translate into the work that we actually carried out. And another very important thing we have is the Audit Quality Control Committee. Because we have these chambers and they're all doing their work in their own sort of, I wouldn't say silos, but individual chambers, we have to make sure that there's someone there who's making sure that we're coherent and consistent and that, you know, the messaging is coherent, and also that we can stand over what we say. Because, I mean, I think it's very important, I think, and my colleagues from the national SIs will agree, we have to be credible as independent audit institutions, and we can only do that if we're producing reports which are solid and they're evidence-based, and it's not just something we would like to say. So I think, you know, it's very important that we have these robust sort of controls in place. So as I say, our work, we have a strategy, I mean, again, which was published last November. I mean, our mantra this time has been that we want to reinforce trust through audit. So again, coming back to the thing about trust of the citizens, because again, I think this is vital, not just for the Court of Auditors, but for the EU project as a whole, that EU citizens have trust in the project, let's say. And I think we're a key component in that. So basically our mission is to be independent and to produce high quality audits, and also to enhance, you know, basically how objectives are being achieved and hopefully improve things going forward. I think it's very important that we're not politicians, we're not decision makers, that's their role, and that's why we have the 7 different institutions. But what we're trying to do is when decisions are made, we're not questioning them, we're coming along seeing how they are implemented and say, okay, is there better ways of doing this, or is this the best way of doing it? And we make suggestions on that basis and recommendations. So we have, I would say, 2 pillars of work. We have our financial audits, so we have which we call recurrent audits here. So that's our annual report. And every year here, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, we've looked at the EU budget. So has it been spent in accordance with the rules? So this is more compliance audit. Are the projects actually complying with the rules? The second part is our performance audit, special reports we call them. And again, it's about 50% of our resources. And here we're more looking at, the first part is sort of the foundation to say, okay, are the rules being enforced? The second one is to see, okay, now are the policies actually achieving the objectives that they were set out to do? Is it actually making any difference on the ground to EU citizens? I mean, if we said we will promise to deliver a youth guarantee or a child guarantee or whatever it might be, is that actually being delivered in practice across the member states? So, as I say, our annual report, we gave a clean opinion on accounts and revenue, and on budget spending, we said we give an adverse opinion, which is not a great situation for the Commission, but it is what it is. We gave an adverse opinion because basically when we do these transactions, we have found that, if you want to call it non-compliance with rules or non-eligible projects or whatever it might be, but I would like to reiterate here, it's not fraud, is that we found 3.6% of an error rate across the budget. And I always have to say to people, I mean, the fact that a project has an error doesn't mean that it wasn't a good project and it actually gave added value to our citizens, and vice versa. Some projects which are perfect on paper actually are useless at the end of the day. So let's try and get the balance right, I would say. So as you can see, EU spending was roughly around 200 billion per year. We also have the Recovery and Resilience Facility under the Next Generation EU. The payments for 2024 were about just over 50 billion euros. That depends on the claims coming through from the different member states as they implement their recovery plans. One issue which we have raised a number of times is basically the level of EU debt. I mean, debt, we all hear about debt at the level of member states itself. I mean, many member states, because after the pandemic, the rules were relaxed, and many are very much in debt. So this makes it more difficult in terms of raising money from member states. But we see that, you know, the EU debt was 600 billion euros at the end of 24, and we estimate it will be roughly 900 billion by the end of 2027. And as you can see there, also we have, at the end of 24, support to the Ukraine was almost 50 billion euros. So if you look at our annual report, as I say, we had we have an error rate of 3.6%. It was better than the previous year where it was 5.2, so it was a better result, if you like. But it's only a statistical sample. It can change from year to year depending on the sample and the level of risk of the different transactions. But I think one area where we have raised is about debt. I mentioned that already. And here we have seen that you have to, you know, in terms of being ready to pay back your debt, you have to have an income stream. And the Commission didn't actually have one to pay back the NGU debt. And now for the next budget, which is for 2028-34, we already see that they have to put aside 30 billion euro every year to pay that debt. So already we're starting from a minus 30 billion position, if you want to put it like that. So I'd say these are kind of the main issues in the different report, in the annual report. I mean, high inflation obviously has an impact on the the purchasing power of the budget. So I'd say this is our compliance report. Have the rules been followed? What politicians sometimes are more interested in are these special reports. I mean, because here what we're saying is these are the areas that we're looking at. So for instance, security and defence. More, as I already said, more important as we go along. And you can see now the level of tasks is quite high there. We've 8 tasks there. And you can see, I mean, we just issued one on the nuclear, facilities in Europe, let's say. We also did one on military mobility there as well. Climate and change in the environment. There, I mean, we have done quite a lot of work. I think it will come down a little bit now. I mean, and will be replaced probably by the competitiveness area because that's the new area. And as you can see, I think one of our reports, which was very interesting, it's under the climate change thing, but it's actually about competitiveness as well. It's about critical raw materials, and there it's a bit like the dependence we had on the Russian for oil. We basically have a huge dependence on countries from China to all over the world for critical raw materials, which will have an impact on our strategic autonomy. I mean, without this, the energy transition will be difficult to achieve because we need things like lithium or whatever for batteries. So these are things we need to source. And if you read our report, it's quite interesting. It's saying it's very difficult, I mean, to just get these all of a sudden. It will take time. Some of it can be recycled, but the recycling levels in the EU are very low for these materials. So then we have other headings there: economic competitiveness, other, which is a miscellaneous thing there. You can see, basically cancer, trying to use efforts to beat cancer. So what I would say is, I mean, sometimes people think that, the European Court of Auditors, all they do is accounts. But what I'm trying to show here is that we really do a varied range of topics. And as I say, critical raw materials, I think, is very important for everyone. It's not too technical a report. Military mobility was another one, which was very interesting because it showed, how ready or not ready we were when the war broke out in Ukraine, and basically the need for maybe better coordination across the member states to make sure that there's a coherent approach to issues like that. So as I say, here's a couple of the reports that we have done. I mean, the first one I've already mentioned is the military mobility. The third one is forest fires. I have to come over because I can't see it, it's very small. And then, critical raw materials I've already mentioned. So as I say, these are just reports we've published. Everything we publish is on our internet site. We're very transparent about that. Everything is published. Everything is published in the official languages, so it's easy for everyone to access and read. So one of the things that has kept us quite busy in the last few weeks is the next budget. So the next EU budget is for 2028-2034. And as I said, we're entering into a different environment. We know there are different and new priorities. And this is basically what's on the table at the moment. I mean, the EU, or the Commission, let's say, has proposed a budget of around trillion euros. And within that, there's a new fund, 865 billion euros, which is basically lumping everything together in terms of cohesion and agriculture, whereas before they were separated out. Now they will be all in one fund. The member states will have to come up with a national plan, and they will be paid on the basis of that. There's also, for the first time, we talked about borrowing earlier, the opportunity to borrow for, I mean, all EU projects are co-financed generally. So the member state pays something and the EU pays something. So what they're actually offering is that member states will be able to borrow to pay their part of it and pay it back later. Again, in line with the, you know, budgetary constraints in different, or treasury constraints in different member states. Then we have the new competitiveness fund. Again, a huge figure in there, of which 130 billion is for defence. Again, that's a new area for us. We haven't audited that much in the past because basically defence didn't feature in the EU budget per se. So we have given our opinions on these. I mean, basically what we're saying is that, you know, we need some simplification, we need flexibility, we need all these things, but we need to make sure that they're done in a balanced way, so that still we can, as auditors, come along afterwards and be able to verify that the money has been spent in line with aligning with the objectives of the EU. One other big area I would say for concern is how it's going to be financed. I mean, this 2 trillion euros, there's already soundings from many member states that it's too high, the 2 trillion euros. They don't want to pay any more national contribution, because normally what you do is you pay a percentage of the GNI, so they don't want to pay any more, I mean, because again of the budgetary constraints. So the Commission has come up with 4 or 5 new sources of revenue. One is a tobacco tax, one is an e-waste management, there's a core tax which is on the profits of companies with a turnover of over 100,000. So these are new sources of income, but the problem is we're not sure that they will actually materialise, because all the member states have to agree to that. And for instance, there's already a tobacco tax in Ireland which is being collected for the national coffers. So if this tax comes in, they will have to give it to Brussels. So that's just one example, but there are many member states who have issues with different elements of this. And this is exactly what I said happened with the NGEU, the Next Generation EU. There was the own resources which were on the table were vetoed by 2 or 3 member states, and they never saw the light of day. And the problem this time is that the own resources is roughly 65 billion euros per year. So out of the 2 trillion, 65 billion will come from own resources every year. 44 billion every year is from these new resources. So obviously, if the 44 billion doesn't materialise, there's a huge hole in the budget. So then you have questions to answer. What do? Do you basically reprioritise your priorities? Do you drop some of them? Because obviously there are many new priorities on the table, whether it's enlargement, which is obviously of a big, significant interest to Moldova. You know, we have security, we have defence. So all these in their own right warrant, you know, being addressed, but someone has to pay at the end of the day, and this is the problem: who will actually, where the money will come from to pay for these. So just to finish, I mean, I started by saying I think it's very important that people are aware of opportunities in the EU institutions. I have to say, generally speaking, when we look at the applications from different member states, it's normally Italians and Romanians who are not far behind as well. So it's quite well, they seem to be quite well aware of it, but I would just encourage that to keep up and keep applying for these things. And what we do is we offer a traineeship twice a year. It's for 6 months. Basically, it's in all the different services. It can be in audit, it can be in communication, it can be in translation, it can be anywhere. So it's 17 euros per month plus the travel expenses to come. I have to be honest and say it's quite expensive to find accommodation in Luxembourg. So the 1700 is needed, believe me. So and then just the application for the next batch opens on the 1st of April. So again, I would encourage anyone who's interested in thinking about a career. I think a traineeship or internship, whatever you want to call it, is a very good way of just putting your toe in the water to see, you know, would this be something that I might be interested in the long term? As I say, that's our traineeship programme. We're a small institution. We're roughly 950 people. So if we compare it to some of the other big institutions, you have the European Commission, which has its own Blue Book traineeship. I mean, the European Commission is almost 30,000 people. So all of these institutions have a traineeship programme. All the agencies across Europe, there's 43 of them, they all take on trainees as well. So what I'm trying to say is that there are an awful lot of traineeship opportunities in either institutions or in different agencies and bodies linked to the EU activity. So that's basically it, and thank you very much for your attention. I hope it wasn't too long.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next speakers. I mentioned twice Mr. Moscovici, father. But Mr. Moscovici, the son, is twice Steaua României, the Romanian star, 1999 and 2022, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. And when someone, a foreigner, receives Steaua României, the national star, that is quite rare and for great contribution to the Romanian state. Mr. Moscovici, as an official in France, Vice President of the European Parliament, Commissioner, today in the European Court of Accounts, knows Romania very well, and is not just knowing Romania, but he has helped the European direction of our country in many moments. So let me now kindly introduce Mr. Moscovici to you.
Thank you so much. I will be brief. I don't have much to add to what the President said, but it's a pleasure to be here once again in Bucharest, which I've done quite often. I've got a little history with this country. You mentioned my father, and I'm very glad you did, since he was a great sociologist and psychologist. But first of all, he was born in Romania, in Brăila, in Cahul, to be precise, in Moldavia, then moved to Brăila, and he moved to France in 1948. Well, somewhere I feel close to Romania. This is a country I accompanied in its accession process. When I was European Affairs Minister, I'm afraid to say that proves that I'm not so young, dear Tony, some 30 years ago, from 1997 to 2002. And I was also the rapporteur for the European Parliament for the accession of Romania. And so I had many, many occasions to come here, and that's why I was given this star order. And tomorrow I will be given the Grand Officer distinction, and I'm very proud of that. What I can just add is maybe a view from the other institutions from which I belonged, because it's the fourth European institution that I belong to. I've been before a member of the European Parliament twice, from 1994 to 1997, and then again from 2004 to 2007, and I was then the Vice President of the European Parliament and rapporteur for the accession of Romania. I've been a member of the Council of Ministers from 1997 to 2002 as European Affairs Minister, and then from 2012 to 2014 as Finance Minister. And I've been also a commissioner from 2014 to 2019. And now I'm a member of the European Court of Auditors from January. So I'm one of, not youngest, but most recent members of this court. And I was also president of the French Court, they call it French Court of Auditors, from 2020 to 2025. So I know the difference between all these institutions. The Parliament, as was said, is the legislative body. That means that it votes the European laws alongside the Council of Ministers, because it's a complication with the EU institutions, is that the power is split between institutions, legislative between Parliament and Council, and the decision-making, the executive between the Commission, which prepares the decisions, and the ministers and the European Council, who takes the decision. When I was a member of the Juncker Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, the president always said, okay, we do a lot at the Commission. We prepare, we propose, we execute. They decide, as you said, the politicians. But what I know, I've also been a French minister for 7 years, is the importance of supreme audit institutions. And they have a special role. And that's why I'm so proud to be now a member of the European Court of Auditors. Well, we don't decide. We don't vote. We're not from the legislative branch. We're not from the executive branch either. But we are useful to both of them. And we are independent, but also in close linkage with, as well, the Parliament and the Council. Why? Because to spend so much money, and the figures were given by Tony, there needs to be a very strong principle, which is accountability first. When you're a politician, you have to be responsible. And you have to have somebody or a body which controls the fine use of funds. And this is what SAIs, whether they are national or European, are about. And that's what we're about with the European institutions. And it's a role that has to be it's discreet. It's not the institution that people know the most, but very, very useful and very important. Because we have to tell the people how their money, the taxpayers' money, the 500 euros each citizen gives to the EU, has been spent correctly or not been spent correctly, dedicated to policies that are efficient or not efficient. That's why there also needs to be so many performance audits on public policies, and that's the way the European Court of Auditors is organized in order to check how funds are dedicated to public and policies. Accountability is one principle. Another principle is independence. We have to be independent. We swear to be independent. We swear that on oath to the European Court of Justice. That's what we did, both of us, Lucien and I, a few months ago, a few weeks ago, I must say. And the third principle, independence is one, and then accountability is another one, is that we need to also try to have some impact. And impact is precisely what we are trying to do here, is addressing the result of our report to citizens, because the money belongs to them. And they are finally the stakeholders to which we have to give information and objective information assessed by professionals. There is a very important staff at the ECA and high quality staff delivering high quality reports. And the members are, I would say, like the board. They supervise, they also adopt the report together. I'm just here for 3 months now, but I can already say that this institution, although it's not as well known as the others, is as important. As you said, it's the last but not the least, and I believe that is fully true. And in this context, well, Romania, as an important member, a recent member, but I hope that Romania will continue its progress. I know that Romania also needs the European funds to do so, that it's a high support for this country. And my last word I could say, as a former finance minister, so member of the ECOFIN Council and the Eurogroup, as former commissioner for economy, finance, taxation and customs, that I hope that your country will prepare in a few years to come to become a Eurozone member. Because the, euro is the currency of all the Union, and it's an element as well of strength and protection. And key decisions are taken there. And my final word will be to you, dear Tatiana. Europe is becoming each time wider with enlargements. And the next enlargement will have a huge strategic geopolitical importance. The next candidates, there are also countries from former Yugoslavia, we must not forget them, but will be about Moldavia and Ukraine in a context where we all know that there is a threat, and that this threat is given by the aggression attitude of Russia. And we hope that we can welcome Moldavia soon, and we appreciate the work that is done as well by the government and by the Court of Auditors of Moldavia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know already Lucian Romașcanu. Sit down. Calm. From Romanian politics, but there are many things which probably many of us, we don't know or we don't remember. For example, we don't remember the fact that twice during his mandates as Minister of Culture, in the culture sector was quiet. No strikes, no protests, nothing. From my experience as Minister of Education, believe me, when in the sector everything is quiet, that means a lot of work behind. I will tell you some words. It's not political campaign because he is not running for anything. For the moment. First mandate, 47% increase of the budget. Second mandate, 270% increase of the budget. You may joke, and to say sure, when the budget is 0.000001, it's very easy to increase the budget with 47%. Believe me, the budget is small, but it's not easy to increase at all. And he succeeded. Also, let me tell you that Mr. Romașcanu is not a perfect person at all. He graduated Academy of Academic Study in Bucharest, so he is not perfect. He studied University of Washington, Seattle. Okay. But he asked me in my office to advise him how to become a student to SNSPA. I told him he has to prepare seriously, and now he has the possibility to show us if he might qualify to become a student in SNSPA or not.
Thank you. You made me a very big surprise, I will tell you right now. Thank you very much. This is not the Oscars, but I will start with some thanks. Thank you, Mr. Rector, dear friend. Thank you, professors, for having us here. It's a Romanian session, that's why I'm speaking. It's an honor for us to be here, and it's very important to be here and share some of our experiences. And I want to say hello to Ion Stavre from the Romanian television, a good friend of mine. And dear students, dear professor, everybody here, dear members of the Court of Accounts, special guests. I won't talk about the European Court of Auditors because my colleagues did it already and did it in a very good way. I will tell you about my experience or not my experience, my way towards this position of, let's say, high European official, because it's important for you, because you're preparing for your professional life, for your careers, and maybe I can give you some, I don't know if advices, because you can make your own mistakes, but at least some hints. And what I am very pleased today, or why I'm very pleased today, is that I have in front of my eyes my past. Mr. Professor Danuț Popescu was my colleague in the high school, and I think he's wondering now how the heck this guy succeeded to become the member of the Court of Auditors. We were at the age that you are now, and we had a lot of dreams. Of course, somebody said that if you consider your dreams at 18 years old, everybody, each of us will fail at the end. But it's very important because we dream big. But this shouldn't prevent us to dream big. I cannot explain how I arrived here. It's if you have the chance, check on the internet, on YouTube, the speech of Steve Jobs at Stanford. And he said one thing very important: do the best, the things you are committed to, and in certain point in your life and your career, all the dots behind will be connected. I didn't know how my career will evolve. I've been in the private sector for 27 years. Then I entered politics. But I did my studies. I read my books. I met maybe the right people. I met some of the wrong people. And all these things prepared me, I hope, that when the occasion arises, I will be fit for that occasion. Because I was proposed to be a Minister of Culture. I'm not an actor, I'm not a painter, I was just a manager, and it seemed that I did it okay because it was quiet. And it's not an easy ministry. It has about 92 institutions, and you work with very special person. So prepare yourself without necessarily knowing what will happen with you, because if you believe in God, if not luck, will bring you opportunities, and you will have to be prepared for these opportunities. And you are preparing yourselves for public service, and we don't know what will happen in 4 or 5 years. Everybody says that in 5 years, 90% of the jobs that we'll know today will disappear, but the public service will continue to be a public service, despite the fact that we'll digitalize it and we'll work with artificial intelligence and so on. A country, the European institutions need people, talented people, good people. So be prepared for that and do whatever it takes you to do in order to become the best version of yourselves. And at the end, serve the public that will trust you at the best of your competencies. I wish you very good luck. Look at me. I'm the member of Court of Auditors. Everything is possible. So I wish you good luck and success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucian. Tatiana Shevchuk. Should I introduce her as the president of the Court of Account in Moldavia, or should I introduce her as a university professor? So, she is our colleague, and as our colleague, I'm sure she will know exactly what to say to our students.
Bună ziua, onorată audiență, dragi colegi, dragi profesori. Sunt onorată să fiu astăzi aici, mai ales că 2 decenii le-am dedicat profesării în universitate și pentru mine este o onoare să revin iarăși aici, într-un mediu studios, într-un mediu care predomină sau în care predomină inteligența, cumsecădenia și setea de carte. Astăzi voi discuta despre Curtea de Conturi a Republicii Moldova și aspirațiile sale în contextul integrării europene. Stimată doamnă președintă, vă mulțumesc în primul rând pentru oportunitatea de a fi aici și domnule rector pentru primirea călduroasă. Și, de fapt, agenda, cum a fost nominalizată, este una extrem de bună, pentru că ați văzut dumneavoastră ce poate face Curtea de Conturi Europeană, care sunt progresele, care sunt aspirațiile și noi, cei din Republica Moldova, vrem să-i urmăm calea. Vrem să fim parte a Uniunii Europene. E evident că pe această cale vreau să vă mulțumesc fiecăruia în parte pentru contribuția dumneavoastră, pentru că orice suport financiar care vine din UE este de fapt contribuția fiecărui cetățean a Uniunii Europene. Și pentru noi este o responsabilitate majoră ca aceste resurse financiare anume să fie orientate spre reforme structurale calitative pentru calea noastră spre Uniunea Europeană. Dacă vorbim de Curtea de Conturi a Republicii Moldova, este o instituție supremă de audit care a fost fondată în 1994, de fapt după ce Republica Moldova și-a căpătat independența. Un moment istoric, dar și foarte important, pentru că ascensiunile acestei instituții supreme de audit au fost vădite de-a lungul anilor. De la început am pornit ca o instituție de control. Ulterior, începând din 2012, încetișor ne-am racordat la standardele internaționale ale instituțiilor supreme de audit și astăzi putem spune cu certitudine că suntem în unison cu cele mai înalte standarde și suntem pregătiți sau aproape pregătiți spre integrarea în UE. Evident că apreciem efortul nu doar financiar, dar și cel instituțional care este acordat de Uniunea Europeană și colaborarea noastră fructuoasă cu instituții supreme de audit omologe ne face să fim mai competitivi, mai puternici și, evident, să fim instituție model de integritate, de independență și de credibilitate pentru cetățenii noștri. Integrarea în UE nu este doar despre cerințe tehnice care trebuie să le bifăm. Este mult mai mult. Este o aspirație fermă a cetățenilor Republicii Moldova de a deveni parte a unei lumi democratice, a unei lumi prospere, acolo unde dăinuie pacea. Și trebuie apreciat acest lucru. Știu că sunt surse care dezinformează, care ne spun că nu e bine în UE. Noi din Republica Moldova vă spunem ferm și suntem ferm convinși că unica cale de dezvoltare a țării este integrarea în UE. Și de fapt ce înseamnă integrarea în UE? Este consolidarea capacităților instituțiilor statului de a elabora reforme și de a fi mai bune, mai puternice în acest aspect. Este de fapt despre consolidarea guvernanței în statul Republica Moldova. Și acest aspect, evident că are impact și asupra Instituției Supreme de Audit, pentru că este parte a arhitecturii statului Republica Moldova, iar beneficiile care derivă din aderarea la UE sunt colosale. Am să trec în revistă cele mai importante. Prima și cea mai importantă este asigurarea independenței Instituției Supreme de Audit. Aici nu vorbim doar de independența operațională, funcțională, dar mai cu seamă și de cea financiară. O instituție supremă de audit trebuie să fie independentă pentru că nu este un moft, nu este un privilegiu, de fapt, dar este o cerință fermă pentru a deveni credibil, pentru a fi aproape de cetățeni și pentru a îmbunătăți politicile publice astfel încât fiecare cetățean să se simtă liber acasă în Republica Moldova ca parte a UE-ului. Și dacă vorbim de independență, aici vreau să mulțumesc partenerilor de dezvoltare, în special și Curții de Conturi Europene, pentru că ne ajută foarte mult și ne ghidează în acest aspect, și Curții de Conturi a României, partener de încredere, a fost permanent și este, susținerea o simțim mereu. Dar un lucru vreau să-l menționez, foarte important, ține de faptul că integrarea în UE nu este doar despre racordarea legislației. Un accent major pe agenda de reforme este și aplicabilitatea lor. Pentru că poți să ai legi bune, dar dacă nu sunt puse în aplicare corect, nu au efectul scontat. Și aici, grație aderării UE, avem deja rezultate palpabile, pentru că am obținut independența operațională prin modificarea legii privind funcționarul public și acum suntem în faza de a modifica și legea privind organizarea și funcționarea Curții de Conturi, cea care ne va asigura independența financiară, extrem de importantă pentru Instituția Supremă de Audit. Evident că cea mai mare resursă a unei instituții, de fapt, este factorul uman. Și, de fapt, chiar dacă vorbim că suntem în era digitalizării și toate procesele cumva se fac singure sau de la sine prin digitalizare, să știți că un factor central totuși este resursa umană, cea mai valoroasă. Și o acțiune sau o cerință a Planului Național de Aderare este dezvoltarea capacităților profesionale ale auditorilor. Este esențială. Dar în pachet cu acest lucru vine numai decât și acele stimulente salariale care trebuie să fie reale și să corespundă unei instituții supreme de audit. Și pe această cale vreau să mulțumesc aderării la UE și toate procesele care au loc, pentru că anume în această fază Este și o lege a salarizării, o nouă lege a salarizării care va fi pusă în aplicare din septembrie 26 și care, de fapt, la justa valoare, sper eu, va remunera munca auditorilor publici. Nu uităm că într-o comunitate este foarte importantă comunicarea. De fapt, ea este esențială. Și când vorbim de comunicare, nu vorbim doar de cea instituțională, dar și cea care este legată de partenerii de dezvoltare, de entitățile auditate, de alte părți interesate. Pe calea reformelor, un accent major este pus cooperării cu Parlamentul. Deci, Parlamentul este o verigă esențială în supravegherea controlului asupra executivului. Dacă Parlamentul nu-și face bine treaba, de fapt, nu avem impact scontat din misiunile de audit. Dar, ca să fim relevanți, ca să fim eficienți, orice instituție supremă de audit trebuie, în primul și în primul rând, să aibă efectul scontat al acelor recomandări pe care le oferă pentru a îmbunătăți activități și procese supuse auditului, pentru a face reforme calitative, pentru a îmbunătăți politicile publice și pentru a îmbunătăți viața cetățenilor. Pentru că relevanța unei instituții supreme de audit este de a schimba spre bine viața cetățenilor. Dar o putem face împreună. De una singură, instituția supremă de audit, cât de performantă nu ar fi ea, nu o poate face, pentru că vrem sau nu vrem, ne place sau nu ne place, dar suntem parte a unei structuri statale care trebuie să cooperăm între noi și să ne ajutăm reciproc pentru a aduce valoare adăugată. Acolo unde ne facem meseria, ministere, agenții, întreprinderi de stat, oriunde. Și evident că dacă vorbim de aderarea la UE, am nominalizat cele mai importante beneficii. Sunt mult mai multe, vă asigur. Dar cel mai important ne face să fim puternici. Să fim cei care putem răspunde exigențelor auditului public extern ce derivă din secolul 21, cu multe provocări. Știu că calea spre UE, am discutat și cu colegii și ne-au spus că este una extrem de complexă. Da, este complexă, dar nu este imposibilă. Dacă îți dorești cu adevărat, dacă muncești cu dăruire, poți avea rezultatele pe care le dorești. Dar este importantă voința. Și poporul Republicii Moldova este cel care își dorește, este cel care de mai multe ori, inclusiv prin referendumul care a avut loc recent, a spus da, vrem să fim parte a UE-ului. Da, vrem să fim parte a unei democrații solide. Da, vrem să fim parte a păcii. Vă mulțumesc pentru atenție.
Și eu mulțumesc și aș vrea și sper să se întâmple curând to have in the Romanian, in the European Parliament, and in the European Commission and in the European Union, 2 countries with Romanian language. Yeah? Always there is a guilty person, Mrs. Mirela Călugăreanu, the guilty one to propose and to organize today this event in SNSPA. You know very well Mrs. Călugăreanu. As I told you, through her team, she sends to us annually regards. Now we have the chance, by the annual controls from the Court of Accounts, now we have the chance to hear the President of the Court of Accounts in SNSPA. Also University Professor Toase, our colleague.
Mă bucur mult să vă fiu alături astăzi. După ce colegi cu o reputație atât de vastă, precum Toni, Pierre, Lucian și Tatiana v-au vorbit, rămân puține lucruri pe care eu să le pot împărtăși cu dumneavoastră. Despre Curtea de Conturi, probabil că din mediul public, din spațiu public, știți deja că am parcurs un amplu proces de reformă în care ne-am standardizat activitatea și ne-am transparentizat-o și noi. Ați văzut că publicăm toate rapoartele noastre, deci n-am să vorbesc despre trecut, și despre prezent și despre viitor. Și asta în puține cuvinte, pentru că noi, cei de la Instituția Supremă de Audit din România, mai avem multe de făcut ca să ne fim în primul rând nouă pe plac. De ce acest proces de modernizare și de reformă? Pentru că avem un scop, acela de a realiza audituri de înaltă calitate, care să răspundă așteptărilor cetățenilor și societății civile, iar rezultatul pe care îl așteptăm atât noi cât și dumneavoastră este ca ele să aibă relevanță, să aducă un plus de valoare în viața noastră a tuturor și să crească încrederea cetățenilor în instituțiile statului și implicit în Curtea de Conturi a României. Vorbeam că pentru a atinge aceste rezultate trebuie să îndeplinim o serie de obiective, între care îmi permit să vă aduc în atenție numai câteva, ca fiind prioritățile noastre curente și viitoare. Implementarea unui control al calității activității de audit ne va conduce, într-adevăr, la a avea rapoarte de înaltă calitate, precum spuneam. Asta înseamnă că rapoartele noastre, dincolo de a fi publicate pe site, dincolo de a fi dezbătute și discutate public, trebuie să fie conforme din perspectiva tuturor standardelor internaționale și toate verigile implicate în procesul de audit să-și aducă contribuția pentru ca ele să îndeplinească condițiile despre care vorbeam. În al doilea rând, și-au atins și antevorbitorii mei acest subiect, este extrem de importantă consolidarea activității de audit al performanței și în cadrul Instituției Supreme de Audit din România. Ne-am mișcat de la ceea ce înseamnă auditul financiar pe care îl facem în mod obligatoriu, după cum spunea domnul rector Pricopie, anual potrivit legislației actuale, către auditul de conformitate, dar cel mai relevant audit este cel de performanță, pentru că prin el putem măsura eficiența, eficacitatea și economicitatea politicilor publice, a modului în care guvernul, parlamentul și managementul instituțiilor pe care le audităm își dovedesc eficiența și respectă principiul acela pe care îl cunoaștem cu toții, value for money, principiul cost-beneficiu. Din perspectiva aceasta a auditului de performanță, știți bine că Curtea de Conturi trebuie să vegheze cu mai multă atenție măsurile care în plan guvernamentar și parlamentar au fost adoptate pentru a ne încadra în ținta de deficit bugetar în anii următori. Deci trebuie să evaluăm în ce măsură direcțiile de acțiune, măsurile adoptate, atât în ceea ce privește colectarea taxelor, dar și reducerea cheltuielilor, aduc eficiența pe care ne-o dorim cu toții. Și pentru asta, într-adevăr, cum am spus, trebuie să dezvoltăm auditul de performanță. O a treia linie de acțiune de interes atât pentru colegii de la Curtea Europeană de Conturi, pentru noi, pentru celelalte SAI-uri membre ale Europei, e foarte important adecvarea auditurilor fondurilor europene la noile exigențe ale cadrului financiar multianual al Uniunii Europene. Precum știți, s-a schimbat un pic paradigma. PNRR-ul pe care l-am implementat și noi și pe care îl derulăm, sperăm cu bune rezultate până la finalizare, înseamnă să monitorizezi ținte, jaloane și să vezi eficiența pe care acești bani europeni îi aduce în viața noastră. E important să alocăm bani pentru investiții, dar este foarte important și cum prioritizăm aceste investiții în activități care au efect multiplicator și care aduc un plus în viața noastră de zi cu zi, atât din punct de vedere economic cât și social. În al patrulea rând, Curtea de Conturi a României deja este implicată și dorește să se dezvolte din perspectiva implementării inteligenței artificiale într-o serie din procesele care pot degreva auditorii noștri publici de munca de rutină, de procese repetitive, astfel încât să le rămână timp pentru ceea ce înseamnă activitatea care implică know-how. De asemenea, și nu în ultimul rând, e foarte important cum valorificăm rezultatele auditurilor noastre și în ce măsură recomandările pe care noi le formulăm aduc un plus de valoare în viața noastră a tuturor. Și din această perspectivă ne dorim să consolidăm și mai mult relațiile cu Guvernul și Parlamentul, pentru ca aceste recomandări să poată genera modificări de politici publice acolo unde este cazul. Dar pentru ca toate aceste obiective despre care v-am vorbit să poată fi atinse, este nevoie de ceea ce facem inclusiv astăzi, de întărirea colaborării între noi, instituțiile de profil, întărirea colaborării și consolidarea în continuare a colaborării cu Curtea de Conturi Europeană, cu celelalte organisme de profil în plan european și internațional, cu instituțiile supreme de audit din statele membre, dar, precum ați văzut, și cu colegii noștri din statele care sunt în curs de aderare la Uniunea Europeană. Numai împreună, făcând acest schimb de bune practici, putem evolua, iar obiectivele despre care v-am vorbit pot fi atinse cu succes. Este o provocare majoră pentru Instituția Supremă de Audit din România, desigur, dar suntem hotărâți și ne-am propus ca prin auditurile efectuate să contribuim la creșterea impactului economico-social a investițiilor, după cum vă spuneam, și îmbunătățirea calității cheltuielilor publice. Și pentru că am plăcerea de a mă afla astăzi la tribuna SNSPA, și vă mulțumesc mult, domnule rector, pentru această oportunitate, trebuie să remarc că această instituție a contribuit la formarea de generații de lideri și rămâne un reper al excelenței în administrația din România. Modelarea viitoarei generații de lideri ne preocupă, desigur, și pe noi și reprezintă, de altfel, o preocupare comună majoră. Am înțeles perfect această necesitate și avem disponibilitatea de a dezvolta parteneriate pe acest subiect. Dragi studenți, viitorul guvernanței naționale este în mâinile dumneavoastră. Auditul public are nevoie de gândirea dumneavoastră critică, de competențele voastre digitale și de integritatea voastră morală. Curtea de Conturi s-a deschis către voi și vă invităm să constatați că această instituție nu este doar o fortăreață birocratică, ci reprezintă un mediu de înaltă performanță în care vă puteți construi o carieră cu adevărat relevantă și cu un adevărat impact social. Avem nevoie de viziunea voastră, proaspătă, pentru a putea îndeplini pe deplin transformarea pe care noi am început-o. Distinși invitați, din perspectiva atribuțiilor Curții de Conturi, apreciem că transparența cheltuirii banului public nu este doar o obligație legală, ci și o formă de consolidare a democrației. Dialogul de astăzi, în acest format trilateral, România, Republica Moldova, și am avut-o și pe colega din Ucraina la o prezentare în plenul Curții de Conturi astăzi, desigur online, și egida ECA pentru acest eveniment este dovada că vorbim cu toții aceeași limbă. Limbajul responsabilității. SAI-urile, Instituțiile Supreme de Audit, sunt gardienii contractului social. Când banul public este corect cheltuit, încrederea cetățeanului crește și democrația este consolidată. Să avem succes împreună. Vă mulțumesc!
Thank you very much, especially for your kind words related to our daily work. I don't have your agreement, but I will say something which I think it's for the interest of our students. We are trying to design an agreement with the Romanian Court of Account to have more students from SNSPA doing internship in Romanian Court of Account, but also to have from the Romanian Court of Account speakers to our activities, to our classes, to interact more with our students and professors. Thank you for following this, I would say, marathon of interventions, very interesting interventions. Now we have, it's true, a shorter period of time for questions, but we still have time for questions. That is bad. A former Minister of European Affairs and professor to SNSPA asked for the floor. That is bad. No? No?
Thank you very much, Mr. Rector. Dear guest, welcome in our house. It's a privilege to have you for this conference. With your permission, I would like to speak in Romanian, just to have small Romanian nuances in order to bring all the meaning of my questions and comments. Voi începe cu dumneavoastră, domnule președinte Murphy. În primul rând, vă mulțumesc pentru prezentarea optimistă pe care ați făcut-o și pozitivă în ceea ce urmează implicarea Curții Europene de Audit în ce va să vie în bugetul 2028-2034. Am câteva întrebări tehnice, pentru că întreaga mea carieră s-a mulat pe tot ce înseamnă fondurile europene pe care România le-a preluat și construcția instituțională pe care am făcut-o din 99 până în 2014, când am plecat din funcțiile publice. Care sunt principalele probleme pe care dumneavoastră le vedeți în termeni reali la nivelul autorităților de audit și a curților de conturi, pentru că sunt diferite modele în diferite state membre, cum știm foarte bine, pentru a crește eficiența și eficacitatea activităților pe care curțile de conturi și în coordonarea Curții Europene de Audit trebuie să le facă. Pentru că sunt câteva comentarii, domnule președinte, și nu mă refer la România, că foarte multe curți de conturi și autorități de audit sunt așa mai permisive în ceea ce înseamnă controlul fondurilor europene. Asta este prima mea întrebare referitoare la acquis-ul comunitar 2028-2034. Domnule ministru Moscovici, vă rog să-mi permiteți de asemenea să mă exprim în limba română și să vă mulțumesc că a fost coordonator național al asistenței de preaderare și post-aderare, pe care cu onoare am condus-o sub 4 prim-ministri. Să vă mulțumesc în calitatea mea de fost director general și fost ministru al afacerilor europene și al comunicațiilor pentru ce ați făcut dumneavoastră pentru România. Din punctul meu de vedere, sunteți una dintre primele 3 mari personalități pe care Europa le-a avut și ni le-a dat spre susținere și încurajare, astfel încât România să devină membru a Uniunii Europene. Și suntem aici unde suntem și vă rog să mă credeți, suntem foarte bine, ba chiar de la 1877 ca independent stat, da? Până acum n-am dus-o niciodată mai bine și suntem așa și datorită dumneavoastră. Și domnule rector, vă propun atunci când va permite agenda domnului Pierre Moscovici să avem o întâlnire în extenso în România, la SNSPA, pentru că merită și SNSPA-ul și România pentru a avea o discuție cu domnul Moscovici, exact pentru perioada de preaderare și cât de greu ne-a fost să ajungem la anul 2007. Întrebarea mea, domnule Moscovici, este ca om care a început cariera după ce am terminat Colegiul Europei de la Bruj, la Departamentul de Afaceri Europene și am pregătit prima dumneavoastră vizită în România. Ministrul era Alexandru Herlea la vremea aceea. Pe urmă a venit bunul meu tutore și prieten Vasile Pușcaș, cu care am început și am terminat negocierile și am fost în echipa națională de negocieri, dar vreau să vă întreb ceva punctual. Ca între oameni de enlargement, știind ADN-ul dumneavoastră politic și profesional pentru extindere, cum vedeți poziționarea Comisiei Europene în ceea ce înseamnă accelerarea procesului de aderare, mai ales pe flancul estic. Pentru că eu personal cred că este o greșeală să așteptăm ca Ucraina să termină războiul și pe urmă să accelerăm cu Moldova și cu Balcanii de Vest. Și vă spun ca om care a avut privilegiul să stea 6 luni în cancelaria primului ministru la Chișinău, pe tot ce înseamnă coordonare de fonduri, că se simte. Comisia Europeană chiar nu accelerează din punctul meu de vedere absolut deloc, așa cum a accelerat cu România, Polonia, procesul de aderare. Vă mulțumesc. Mulțumesc, domnule Rex.
Thank you very much. We have a small issue. We have to try to conclude, unfortunately, because some of the students have other classes in a couple of minutes. So it seems that we will try to answer these two questions. And after that, maybe just one other question, yeah. Or to have also the, yeah, Florina, would you like? And after that, to have the answers. And,
So I have a question to Mr. Pierre Moscovici. Given your expertise, what would be the most important lesson that you've learned during those two positions as a politician, but also as a member of the European Court, that can be translated as an advice to national European leaders?
Mr. President, you have the mic. Mr. Moscovici, the mic.
Now, mine is a more technical question than the one of Pierre's. I think Pierre will elaborate on that. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you look at our reports, I mean, we see in different member states different problems we have with the other authorities and the work of other authorities, because we would like to be able to rely more on the work of other authorities in member states to lessen the burden, to not be everyone auditing. We're auditing, the other authorities are auditing, the Commission is auditing. But unfortunately, I mean, there are a number of issues. I think, first of all, the SAIs have different mandates. Some have jurisdictional roles. I mean, they're judges and they can sanction. Others have no role at all in EU funds, let's say. That's designated to the Department of Finance or an arm within the Department of Finance. So it's very difficult to have a common, framework, let's say. And obviously, all the SAIs are independent, and we can't, I mean, no one can prescribe what they should and shouldn't do. I mean, they're independent. But in terms of I think, the next MFF you're talking about, I mean, the whole issue, I mean, the sad part about, you hear about the EU all the time, is that it's very difficult for beneficiaries to get the money. That in certain cases, it's actually not worth the effort that they have to do, that they'd rather not get the money, which I think is a sad indictment of how it should work. Because ultimately, we're all supposed to be there to help these SMEs. I mean, they're the heartbeat of the economy. These are the people we want to encourage and to basically facilitate that they can use EU funds. So I think there are complex rules. I mean, the Commission talks about simplification. It's a very easy word to say, but to actually implement it is much more difficult. We need simplification, I would agree with that, but you also need a word that was mentioned earlier, accountability and responsibility as well. You cannot just give the EU funds and say, there you go. I mean, there has to be some balance between simplification and control, let's say. But I think one area where certain member states are more guilty than others are that they actually implement rules themselves which go over and beyond the EU requirements. So national rules, this so-called gold plating, because they're so worried that the Commission will come along afterwards and ask for the money back, that they actually make it even more difficult and complex for beneficiaries to benefit. And I think that's not the right way to go either. So it's not an easy solution, but I think there's some of the issues around it. Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for your kind words, maybe too kind. I don't know precisely when was the revolution here, 1999.
1989.
89. Then the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Soviet Union was done in 91. Okay, in Copenhagen in 93 were adopted the criteria that a country needs to fulfill in order to join. Then the negotiations started first in Luxembourg in 1997 and for Romania in Helsinki in 1999. I know that because I was present at these two summits as European Affairs Minister. And afterwards, 10 countries joined the Union in 2004, and then Romania and Bulgaria in 2007, after the acceptation by the European Parliament. That is too long. That's clear to me. And it creates, I would say, a double frustration. There is a frustration in the, I would say, former European countries who believe that they are in first class and too easily that they have to deal with countries which are not prepared. And it also creates a frustration in the countries which are exceeding because it's too long, because also they believe that after they got free from the Soviet Empire, they fall into the hands of another empire. And I think this is one of the things that create also populism and an anti-European feeling, both sides, as well in the former countries and in the new countries. And now we are facing this enlargement for Moldavia and Ukraine. I said it's a geopolitical enlargement. I believe it. Frankly speaking, I'm not that sure that we would have Moldavia and Ukraine as a candidate if the context was different. What has created these candidacies, let's be frank, is the Russian aggression. And we need Ukraine and Moldavia inside the EU. And I think that Moldavia and Ukraine need to be in the EU because they cannot join NATO and they're under threat. And we need to take that into account. It's impossible that we impose them 15 years as it was done for the other countries in the waiting room. So I think that the Commission and the Member States need to invent something that could be something like, I would say, a progressive accession. First, be present in the political chamber of decision, European Council and Council of Ministers, and then share policies, because it needs to be prepared. If you're not prepared, that's a shock. That's a financial shock for the EU, and that's also a shock for the exceeding countries. But I think that, well, we need to think about it, and we need to do that fast. I would love to have Ukraine and Moldova with a minimal preparation, and there your role is very important. I know the energy you have, but also that the process would be progressive, that we invent something new. And maybe that is also about inventing something new of the Union, because, well, we need to have now a European defense, we need to protect ourselves, and that's a new role for the EU. That could be a different conception also. We've done everything for the market, now maybe we need to change our priorities. And for the second question, I will be very brief. I've been a civil servant, I would say, for some 20 years. I started as a member of the Court of Auditors in France. I finished as the president of the Court of Auditors in France, but some 30 years after. And in the meantime, I've been a French civil servant, I've been a commissioner. A commissioner is both a civil servant and a politician. Well, and I've been 20 years a politician. I've been elected 3 times in the national parliament, 2 times in the European Parliament. I've been a minister for 7 years, a commissioner for 5 years. I was a social democrat. And I remember when I was young, there was a Swedish social democrat prime minister who was very famous, Olof Palme. And he said, when you're in a position, never forget that you want to be in government. And when you're in government, never forget that you will go back to a position. That means wherever you are, be serious. In the 20 years I was a civil servant, I always remembered that I was a politician. That means, in the good sense of the term, have in mind that a policy has to be supported by the people, accepted by the people. Don't be technocratic. I think that a civil servant must not be technocratic. If we deliver performance audit, it's also about that. And when I was a politician, I never forget that I was a civil servant. Meaning, I always ask myself, is this realistic? Can this be done? Being a politician is not about helping people to dream or to have illusions or to hope that things that are fake are going to happen. We need to take into account financial realities, social realities, economic realities. And so for those who are students here, that would be my advice. You need to be interested in politics because that's a noble cause. Never forget realities.
We really appreciate the fact that you accepted the idea to dedicate 2 hours from your very tough agenda and to be in dialogue with our students. I think somehow you decided to do an investment, but an investment not in your career or in your objectives, in their career and objectives, our students. And for this, we all, I think you'll join me, we'd like to thank you. And the proposal of my colleague will be approved, and will be back, not just to Mr. Moscovici, but also to every one of you, and when we'll have the possibility to repeat this and to go further with this dialogue. Thank you very much.